We're here at Lahoma now with our wheat geneticist, Dr. Brett Carver. And Brett, great group out here at Lahoma. And one of the first things you talked about is the success of Smith's Gold and kind of what may be lying ahead in that line. Talk about that.
Oh yeah, Smith's Gold has been a very popular variety in Oklahoma and points south into Texas for good reason. It's a really good, high yielding, widely adapted variety. But one thing I think we should point out for a lot of our audience is the stripe rust resistance on Smith's Gold is outstanding. And we really needed that this year. This was a stripe rust year, among other things. But Smith's Gold held up really well. So we'd like to continue that lineage. And I've been working on it for quite some time.
Of course, you have an eye on the future. What are you seeing coming down the line?
Seeing a lot of good things. It's been hard to pick the best, but we have four being featured today in this field tour. I want to talk about just a couple of them. The first one being this OK2708. Those first two numbers really mean something. That means we started testing this line statewide for quality and for yield in 2020. So that kind of tells you how long it's been in the program. We have a pretty good idea how it's going to do, and it's statewide, from Panhandle to east, even the eastern part of the state. This is 1/2 Smith's Gold and 1/2 Eastern European germplasm, specifically germplasm from Romania, a variety called Miranda. Nice name. So it's a Miranda Smith's Gold cross. The yield on this is challenging high cotton, if not surpassing high cotton. I want to make sure of that with this year because, of course, we had a lot of factors figure into yield that they're very important. And so I think it's going to do it. And I was so confident we gave the seed to Foundation Seed to go ahead and increase it.
Great.
But we have some backups.
Okay, let's talk about those.
Okay, so right down here is OK21D. It's kind of a long name. I attribute the name to the double haploid laboratory in Manhattan, Kansas. Heartland Plant Innovations. That's where we get our double haploids, and the D in this name means it was double haploid. So we were able to produce a progeny of, in this case, Green Hammer and Smith's Gold quickly. And we started testing it in 22, 1 year after the 21. So we have a pretty good idea how this is going to do. This looks like a short Green Hammer when it's mature, a much shorter Green Hammer, and also a much larger head. I think it's a beautiful wheat. It needs to go on somebody's table. I have a lot of confidence, not just in this variety, but in the genetics behind it. Green Hammer and Smith's Gold, they're leading varieties in the state, and for good reason.
Okay, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the #1 variety in the state, which of course is Double Stop.
Sure is.
And yeah, it's still performing, but there's a future brewing as well.
Yeah, and we've talked about this on the show before where we wanted to broaden that future, broaden the horizon of the Double Stop lineage. And so we did that in two ways. We kept Double Stop with the herbicide trait intact, so we still had that BASF trait for beyond resistance. But we also took the trait out. We talked about this in previous shows where, you know, we basically have Double Stop but without that trait. Maybe it doesn't mean so much now since the trait is not protected like it was before. We still want to be good stewards of the trait, but we certainly have the option of going just Clearfield. And so we keep the trait. So let's talk about the options we have. The first two without the trait, these are in the variety trials this year. They are outstanding Double Stop derivatives, or 50% Double Stop. This is not a very tall year. I mean, it was drought stress in this environment. So the stature is not as tall, but still you can see the difference. It's pretty outstanding. Much better yield. We're talking up to 15% better yield given the year, depending on how many diseases we have. The more disease, the better. These like disease. They also like grazing. So those are the two untraded varieties or experimentals. Now we have two that are traded, which have, again, the herbicide tolerance. And it's been tough to choose between these two. This is again, 50% Double Stop, and that one is, the 8417 is 75% Double Stop. And it's taller, as you can see. It looks more like Double Stop, but a much bigger head. So I think there we're talking about at least a 15% jump over Double Stop. I want it to get into that high cotton showdown territory, which I think it will. Give me one more year this year and I'll nail it down. and we might just make this public in the summer. Which one it is, still not sure. I'll go back to this 125 real quick and say, yes, it's a double stop derivative, but I also look at it as an uncharted successor, because the other half of the parentage is what made uncharted. So there's a little bit of both in these varieties. I'm really excited about both of them.
Lots of potential there on the family tree, of course.
Yes.
And then when it comes down to, okay, it's decision time, how do you make that decision? That's kind of $1 million question, I'm sure, but how do you, what's the criteria that ultimately helps you decide?
Yield, quality, and then everything else. And the everything else is mostly driven by diseases that we have in Oklahoma, and there's up to 15 that we could have any given year. But of course the big ones are stripe rust, leaf rust, barley yellow dwarf. And so I want positive results on those with that yield package and with acceptable, if not superior quality. We like superior on all fronts.
Great information about what's happening here at Lahoma, and we'll continue our conversation here on SUNUP again next week. Thanks for your time, Brett.
Thank you. I look forward to that.